So now we continue the theme of utilization and we push it down and start looking at the fit between, at the aggregate level, with the demands of jobs and the skills of people. This first chart is for band members on reserve, and it shows a very simple but powerful result. First, there are far more level 1 Aboriginal people living on reserve that have level 1 skills for which there are no level 1 jobs. So a surplus of level 1 workers. Level 2, there's a small surplus as well, so more level 2 people than there are level 2 jobs. And then significant shortages of skill, so more level 3, 4, and 5 jobs than there are people to fill those jobs. This kind of misfit in economic terms is very, very costly, and so policy should try to reduce the size of these skill shortages and surpluses. The situation is much the same for band members living off reserve, except we note a much larger surplus of level 2 workers and an even bigger shortage of level 3 workers. So more level 3 jobs than there are workers to fill those jobs. And for other Aboriginals living off reserve, mostly Métis population in New Brunswick, we see again the same pattern, different relative fits, but surpluses of level 1 and 2 workers, and shortages of level 3, 4, and 5 workers to fill the jobs that are currently available. If we push utilization even further down and don't look at the aggregate, but look at the fit between actual worker skills and the occupations they're in, we get the startling result that over half of the workers in New Brunswick, Aboriginal and non, are in literacy skill shortage, which means they have literacy skills below the level associated with adequate job performance. This is a huge number and very troubling in terms of what it implies for productivity growth in the future. About 30% of workers in New Brunswick are in literacy skill balance. This is okay for now, but if skill intensity of employment increases, it means these workers have no cushion upon which to rely to meet that rising skill demand. And finally, a little less than 20% are in literacy skill surplus. They have more skills than their job currently demands, and so were one to find a way to increase the skill intensity of employment, you could use that surplus and get significant economic benefit from doing so. If we now then compare how Aboriginal populations in the province compare to the general population, we see that band members on reserve are actually 10% more likely to be in literacy skill shortage than their non-Aboriginal peers. This is bad. It means over 60% of them have lower skills than their job notionally demands. And by arithmetic, they're also less likely to be in balance and in surplus. The situation is almost the same for Aboriginals living off reserve. About 9% more likely to be in shortage and less likely to be in balance and surplus. So the summary here is that in a competitive labor market like the Canadian one that we've seen provides workers with access to employment and wages and adult education and training based on skill, Aboriginal workers will start out behind. They'll be the last people to get employed. When they do get employed, they'll be paid less, and they'll be more likely to lose their jobs through layoff or unemployment, and much less likely to participate in adult education and training that will keep their skills current. So this is a problem that we need to fix for the general labor market, and a problem that needs to get fixed for Aboriginal people so that they can compete fully and fairly in the Canadian economy. So we now turn to talking about the nature of skill shortages in the province, what one would have to do and invest in order to eliminate skill shortages, and what the potential economic benefits would be as a result. We start with a chart showing the numbers of Aboriginal workers by type of Aboriginal worker in the province that are in skill shortage. 7,000 out of the 10,000 Aboriginal workers in the province are in literacy skill shortage. So that's about 70%. This is a very high percentage and bodes ill for their economic performance. So that's the bad news. The good news is that A very large majority of those workers are in literacy segments C and D. These are people who can read well. They're fluid and automatic readers. They just don't have the cognitive strategies and skills associated with mastering level 3 tasks. And remember from earlier in the presentation, level 3 is where workers in the Canadian economy have to be competitive in the global economy. Learners in level C and D require quite limited and focused remedial education to raise their skills to level 3. So there's a lot of people that need help, but what needs to happen with them and to them is educationally is not so demanding. So if we use that profile of what learning is needed to eliminate skill shortages, we can come up with cost estimates of what it would cost to fix the problem. In New Brunswick, for band members, we're looking at a total bill of about $18 million. Most of that amount, $15 million, to deal with on-reserve populations. And for the Métis living in the province, you're talking about an investment of $14 million. So these are big numbers, and in a time when governments are strapped for resources, it's a very large number indeed. The real policy question is, how should these costs be attributed? Should individuals pay? Should their employers pay? Should government pay? Or should it be a combination of all of the above? So, given that that's a big investment, our analysis has gone on to look at what would the economic benefits be that would be precipitated by the investment. And what we see is the benefits are enormous. Eliminating literacy skill shortages will improve worker productivity at the rate of, for each point of shortage eliminated, earnings go up $155. So when you add all of that up, it means rates of return between about 150 and 200% in the province, which makes investment in literacy a wonderful investment and something that would yield dividends for the coming decade. So we've established that literacy is economically important. It punishes people that have low skills, and we have a rough idea of what it would cost to fix the problem and what the economic benefits would be. So if someone were to invest, the question is, where would you put your money? And we've done analysis to try to identify where in New Brunswick the greatest needs are. I'm going to show you an example of this product. The first is for Fredericton. This map shows literacy skill levels by neighborhood, and in this presentation, green areas have the lowest percentages of level 1 and 2 adults, and the more you move to orange and yellow, orange, and red, the proportion of adults with level 1 and 2 skills rises. So literacy programs should situate their programs, and governments should allocate the resources to the orange and red areas in Fredericton. A second related product are a series of report cards for each and every major community in Canada. In this case, Fredericton is compared to 840 other communities of similar size. They get an A grade on their economic demand for literacy skill. They rank 45th out of 840. They can have almost 20 million literacy points that they could put to economic use, and have a very high average score for employed workers of 295, well into level 3, where we need to be competitive. They utilize only 68% of the available supply, so there's room by creating employment and skill-intense jobs to drive that up and realize rapid GDP growth in the city. But all is not rosy. If you turn to the costs and benefits, we estimate that it would take $27 million to give every worker the skills they need to do their job well, or about $1,226 per learner. If one were to make that investment, we're looking at an increase in earnings in the following year and every subsequent year of $141 million, about $6,400 increase in every worker's pay packet, And this would be a wonderful thing if you think of it from the individual level, and from a government level, it would greatly increase the tax base. And finally, if we could find a way to make all jobs more knowledge and skill intense and use up the literacy surpluses that are evident in Fredericton, we could earn another $43 million per year in additional earnings. For a second contrast, I have a report card from Moncton. It ranks B on its economic demand for literacy skill, 101st out of 328 larger metropolitan areas, with a 29 million point supply of literacy skill, a lower score than Fredericton, 288, but still above the 275 threshold that we think is necessary to be competitive. And they're using less of that available supply, only 66%. So, like Fredericton, pushing that utilization rate up would yield immediate and positive and strong economic benefits. Solving the literacy skill shortage problem in Moncton would take $47 million, but would yield $226 million in additional earnings each and every year after the investment. You'd have to spend about $1,400 for each learner, but that gets you $6,700 in increased earnings per learner, a very large and immediate return. And finally, Moncton has a fairly big literacy skills surplus, and so you could get another $54 million in earnings by finding a way to use those up. So we've established that literacy is important to our future as individuals and as a country. We've also established that because it's responsible for most of the social inequality and all the things we value, employment, earnings, health, and access to power and influence in the society, that it's singularly important to individuals, and if we worry about inequality, to the society as a whole. The situation for Aboriginals is particularly dire because their lower skill levels translate into economic and social disadvantage that is patently unfair. And finally, again, particularly important for Aboriginals, having literacy and being able to use this tool to defend your own rights, obligations, culture, and language is something that is one of the few things that will protect those Aboriginal populations in the province of New Brunswick. So I hope that New Brunswickers take these findings to heart and actually take steps to increase the demand for skill, to increase the supply for skill, and to find a way to make those markets for skill more efficient, and in doing that, paying particular attention to the Aboriginal workers in the province. So thank you. Want to know more about literacy? Go to any of the following websites shown on the screen: the website for Data Angel, the website for Statistics Canada, the website for Bow Valley College, or the website for the Canadian Council on Learning. You'll find out about how important literacy is to Canada's future economic competitiveness and our collective well-being. Thank you.